The video you are about to see on this DVD is a dramatization about a fictional capital defendant named David Knight. The characters in the video are actors working from a script, and the story bears no intentional resemblance to any person or their family. Although our story is fictional, the adversities faced by David are tragically common themes in the childhoods of capital defendants. Their stories are compelling and powerful. The technology of digital video brings the poignant reality of their life stories into the courtroom in an accurate and meaningful way. There is also additional information included with this DVD on the making of a mitigation video, as well as information about our company, Access Legal Video.
I just always felt that David would have been okay. He would have been fine if someone would just have been there for him. Just been there and shown some concern and some care. I think things would have been very different for him.
Well, my mom and dad, had 3 daughters, and so when David came along, it was like the son they never had. It was all right with me because I didn't know how to be a mom. I was busy running off doing my own thing.
David's lived with me as long as I can remember. As soon as he was born, he lived with us, and he was really like my little brother. I mean, until he was 4 or 5 years old, he lived with our family, and he was a sweet boy, and we were just like best friends.
Joanne, he was just another one of her kids. But it was more how David looked at Joanne that was the problem, because he really thought that she was his mama. I mean, Lashar had left him when he was a baby, and that's the only mama he knew. Lashar was around, and he just called her Shasha like he was one of her sisters.
Well, I knew his sister, well, not really his sisters, it was his mother and his aunt, but they were raised like they were his sisters, because his grandma was his mom. And I knew the whole family had trouble. I knew his mom when she was a kid. This is a small town, and you just know things about folks.
When he was around 5 years old, my sister Lashara came with Dante, her boyfriend, and they just took him to live with them. She wanted him to come live with them.
I met Dante, and he found out I had a son. He said if we picked him up and went to Fort Worth, we could get some good public housing and some welfare checks. So that's what we did. Dante just took the money and left us, David and me, to starve. When he did come back, he beat us. Well, we all knew that was going to be a disaster when she went off with him.
Well, David thought he was part of our family, so when Lashara came, he hardly knew her, and he was very upset, and I was upset, and I couldn't stop crying.
I don't know what his circumstances were really before he came to us, but that child was scared. Like I said earlier, the children in that area, they grew up early, they grew up tough, and he didn't come from that background. He'd been somewhere else. He was afraid of the other children. They didn't like him. He didn't like to be with them. He was a loner. I think that David probably, slept in his clothes, I'm pretty much sure. And a lot of times he would come to school, and I think he probably wet the bed, so he smelled of urine from the night before. He didn't know any difference, but, the kids noticed. They noticed he smelled.
It was really scary when we went to Fort Worth, my mom and I, to see Lashara and David. The apartment was a wreck. We walked in, and the smells were terrible. No one had cleaned the house ever. There were roaches, insects all over the place. David was dirty. You could tell his clothes hadn't been washed. It was just sad. There was no food for them in the refrigerator. I mean, the house was a mess.
I think she worked or something, but open houses, parent-teacher nights never appeared. In fact, nobody ever came for David.
He was some kind of a drug dealer or something. He was no good, no good. And she came back when David was about 10 years old, and she was 10 times worse than when she left. She'd come and she'd drop David off, and she'd be just so perfect and special and talk her mama into letting her come back. And then she'd run off again with some guy that would come along, and she'd get back on the drugs. And that cycle just went over and over and over again. It was so confusing for all of us. David, he didn't know whether he was coming or going during all this period.
Once Dante died, LaShara and David came back and lived with us, and that was really hard. LaShara just needed our help. She couldn't do it by herself, and David was just totally different. I mean, he just wasn't the same little boy that he used to be, the sweet little boy that I remember. You could tell that there was just so much anger and resentment, and he just had a lot of problems.
Well, when David got to high school and we got him involved in the soccer team, I could see that he was real troubled, and I referred him to the counseling system, but we just don't have enough counselors to take care of all the kids, and I don't know that he was able to be helped by that at all.
When LaShara and David came back from Fort Worth after Dante had been killed, it was just piling bad upon bad for Joanne. By then, she'd already moved in with our mom and was working 2 jobs because Roger had gone to prison.
Well, we were, getting by, I guess you'd say. I was painting houses and doing some stuff for some guys I knew, but it wasn't real steady. I worked some, I'd be off for a while and things would get tight, and this guy made me a little deal that I could make a little money on the side. Ended up I was selling dope, and money was good. I was hoping to just pay the bills and put up a few dollars and catch up, so then the house painting would keep us going. But I got caught and they put me in jail, and that didn't help.
When my father went to jail, he left us with no money, and then David and LaShara came back to live with us, and at this point we were all living with my grandmother because we couldn't afford to live on our own and take care of each other. We had just nothing.
It was a sad day when we lost Joanne, but it wasn't sadder for anybody than it was for David, because she had always been the one that he knew he could count on. And, we all have our troubles, but she did the best she could. And Roger and David, they just go after it. I guess David was, about 16 at the time, and that's such a hard time, especially for boys, but they would fight, and finally Roger just kicked him out. That never would have happened if Joanne had been there.
Well, David did come out for the soccer team, and we saw a lot of potential in him, but then his grandma died, and he just fell apart. He was already having trouble keeping his grades up, and that just was the straw that broke him. He just couldn't keep going, and he quit.
We were all living in the house together, and it wasn't easy, but he was getting a little wilder, and I didn't know what to do anymore. Between the jail time and not painting houses, I was just not doing anything anymore. And then my wife died, and without Joanne around, LaShara just took off. I don't know. She was always gone, and David and I really got on each other's nerves after a while because he was used to being independent and doing whatever he wanted to, and I wasn't used to being a dad or a grandfather or anything. And so he and I just finally got to it, and it was either beat him up or throw him out, and I just sent him out. I said, look, you got to go because I can't do this.
You know, David was a good boy at heart, and I think the thing that went most wrong for him was he just didn't have a real man there that could show him the way, that could show him what it means to do the right thing, somebody he could have respected and looked up to. He never had anybody like that.
And you could tell that David just wanted so badly to have LaShara's love and attention and for her to be a real mother for him. And she just never was that kind of a person for David. And I know that that's the reason he is the way he is today.
I guess David just needed more attention than I could give him. I was so young when I had him that I didn't know how to be a mom. I did what I could, but I guess it just wasn't enough. Wish I could have been a better mother.